being in a loving, connected, nurturing relationship requires work in the same way that if you want to build a body, you can't just like wish for it to happen. You have to get to work.
Let's jump in. And I want to start with the three topics that I think are the three biggest questions you're always getting, which is what you eat and how you train and what your beauty secrets are. So maybe let's start with the food, and not just what you eat, but when you eat and why you're making those choices.
Sure. I think I want to pre-frame this by saying that this changes. There's certainly, what I do works really well for me because it's been a process of play and trial and error. And I also have altered the way that I eat over the course of time, depending on, my health and my well-being. So, when I was unhealthy, and trying to fix that, there's like a certain, intervention. There's a certain way of eating, let's say, that you might employ when you are unhealthy. And then that diet and, even the exercise and the lifestyle, all of that all changes as your metabolism heals, as you become healthier. So all that to say, I've said it on the show before, but I think it bears repeating before we kind of dive into like what I do, is that the diet that you follow, when you are unhealthy, let's say, or you have a problem that you're trying to fix. So maybe it's hormones, maybe it's weight loss, or accumulated weight, let's say in your 40s. Like we put an Instagram post up. It's like, hey, we're going to do this interview. And like, what do you want to know? And so many women were like, I'm in my 40s or I'm in my 50s and I'm doing all the right things and I'm gaining weight and I just don't know why. Like, please help. So the protocols that you might follow when you are unhealthy or you have a problem to solve, like unwanted weight gain or hormonal, let's say, derangement or whatever it is going to be different than, let's say, what I'm doing now. Okay. So I just want to say that, because what I don't want is for people to be like, okay, so she has a protein shake and it's like 1.5 scoops. And then I'm just going to go into like, without any context and without any like, understanding of like where I am. So where I used to be was very, for years, really like, hormonal, issues. I ran very estrogen dominant, suffered a lot from PMS, outlined that in my book, The Betty Body, who now has a little shelf right behind me here for YouTube. You can see her standing there. So followed very much a ketogenic diet where I was really restricting carbohydrates because I felt very inflamed, let's say, in my luteal phase of my cycle. So after I ovulated the last 2 weeks of my cycle, it was very uncomfortable for me. Like rings didn't fit, angry, and I call them, angry and swollen breasts, like very, very sensitive to kind of wear t-shirts and sports bras and stuff. And so the ketogenic diet for me was very, very helpful in helping to regulate my blood sugar, my overall inflammation, and all the things that I used to suffer from. Now I don't have that problem anymore. So the tendency is still there. Like I know my genetics, right? So if I'm like eating, a certain way, or I'm not lifting, or I'm not employing some of the lifestyle practices that I adhere to now, I certainly can slip back there. But now I would say that I follow more of a, I guess it would be called like a balanced diet where it's a higher protein diet, and that's driven primarily through the needs of my workout schedule. I mean, we just did back today, and it's like maybe you can comment on my workout, but like I'm lifting very heavy weights. I'm approaching muscle fatigue, like getting very close to muscle fatigue where my muscles are failing, like I can no longer initiate a contraction. So it's a higher protein diet. I don't know exactly my macros. I used to really be very diligent with, carb and calorie counting. But if I could guess, I'm probably having somewhere around probably 17 to 1800 calories a day, maybe 130 to 150 grams of protein approximately, probably about the same in carbohydrates. And then the balance of that would be fat. So somewhere between, call it like 55 to 65, let's say, grams of fat. And that probably works out to about 17 or 1800 calories daily. And that's very much in contrast to what I used to eat, which was like primarily fat. It was like a 70% fat diet, and then like kind of moderate protein and like very low carbohydrates. What I'm finding now with my goal, like my goal now in my 40s is to put on, I mean, it's always been like, I've always had fitness and always had training, in my life, but now it's like, all right, I'm 40. Like I want more. Like I want to make sure that I look as, great as I can, certainly as I age. Like that's, one of the beautiful things about muscles that like, really, you can really shape your body, but also more from a functional perspective. Like I'm in perimenopause, like just by virtue of my age, like I'm in my mid 40s. So, I want to make sure that when I do reach menopause, that it's easier, let's say, than someone who doesn't have good, or their blood glucose disposal isn't optimized. Maybe their liver function isn't what it should be, their gut microbiome, et cetera. So that's like my food in terms of like the overall like kind of macro split calories that I'm taking in. Let me think. And I can just like, my weight is like somewhere around like 130, like last time I weighed is like 133. So if that gives you any context, like I usually have about as much protein as my weight, right? So I'm 133. I probably have somewhere between 130 and 100. I think I said 150 gram, like leg day, I have more protein. Back day, it's like kind of closer to 130, let's say. So there's that. And then what I used to do was I used to fast every single day for like 16 hours. And then I'd have an 8-hour eating window. And what I found was that was way too aggressive for me. And then it was also, I would also try to wait until lunchtime. So I would wake up and I would work out and I'd be like, no, I'm not going to eat. I'm just going to wait because my fasting window is 8 hours. Or my eating window is 8 hours. So I will eat at noon. And I found that was too much for me. So I started shifting my eating window earlier in the day. So now I will work out, we work out pretty early in the morning. Geez, what would you say? Like we're probably at the gym like 5:30, 5:45-ish.
We get there any time between 5:30 and 6. Yeah.
So anytime between 5:30 and 6. So we're home at about 8. Well, let me think about that. So, like 7:38, we're home. And then when we get home, I eat something. So, if you're talking in fasting terms, like I'm breaking my fast when I get home, and that's with some protein and some carbohydrates. So it might be a scoop and a half, as I mentioned before, it's like a scoop and a half of protein. Like each of my scoops of protein is 25 grams of carbohydrates. I want a little bit more than that. So I'll do a scoop and a half, which brings me approximately to 35, 37-ish grams. And then I'll have some oats, or I'll have, some like kind of carbohydrate that pairs with that. So that's kind of like my post-workout. And then breakfast favorite, what my favorite breakfast is. I love it. It's like eggs. I put some cheese. I wrap it in a tortilla. I put some salsa on it. That's my little habanero, like thing that I like to do with it. And I'll have like some fruit with it. So like whatever, we get delivery from like a farm. So maybe it's pears, maybe it's blueberries, maybe like whatever they've like delivered is usually what I have with it. Lunch is it varies. It can be chicken breast, chicken thigh, ground beef, fish, like kind of whatever is there, with a side of kind of a slow releasing carbohydrate. So that might be like a sweet potato. It could be, I have rice. I had rice today. Trying to think of what other, and then like some vegetables. So it like might be broccoli, or it might be tomatoes with garlic. It could be, like corn. It could be parsnips, beets, like what kind of, it's like protein, veg, and then a carbohydrate. And then dinner is kind of the same, like kind of the same deal as lunch.
You mentioned the gym and training. And one thing I want to share that I am always in awe when it comes to you is that you can get yourself past the sticking point. I find that, especially let's say with weights or training, we all have our comfort zone, and then the growth happens outside of your comfort zone in the discomfort zone. And often people will need a personal trainer or someone else pushing them through, and you can do it yourself. So I want to talk about, first of all, your mindset while you're training, and what is happening in your brain while you're working out that allows that to happen.
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I think there's a couple of things, and this is going to get into like maybe something I wasn't planning on getting into, but I think it's relevant to kind of explain it. But I think that I just naturally have a lot of discipline. And that comes from maybe growing up, let's say, in a bit more of an unstable environment where I felt like a lot of times things were like out of my control. So I would try to control the things that I could. So that ended up translating for me into like good grades. Like I could always get good grades, like irrespective of what was happening in like my home life, let's say. I could get A's and I could control that. So I think that I kind of from a young age learned the value of discipline. And then that's kind of what got me through my professional schooling. It got me through university, through chiropractic school, starting a business, like all the things. Like I've also competed in fitness. So I also know, like how mentally and physically exhausting that can be as well. So I guess when I'm lifting weights, I'm trying to push the limits of my matter, if that makes sense. So for example, I'll use today as an example because it's like recent. We went to the gym, and today for me was like a back day. So, like pull-ups and rows and barbell rows and all the kind of things. So kind of right before I'm lifting, like right before I'm about to do the set, like I'm kind of talking to myself a little bit, and I'm like, okay, so you're going to do this, and you're going to do this. Like my goal is like 8 times. If you get to 8, great. Anything like 6 to 8 would be good. 8 to 10 is like even better. And then when I'm doing the set, I am completely not in my brain. Like I'm not thinking at all. Like I'm completely in the muscle. And this is maybe from my training as a chiropractor. Like when I was caring for a patient, like my mind was in my hands, if that makes any sense at all. Like I was kind of scanning the nervous system, scanning, like the tension and tone, let's say, of the musculoskeletal system, seeing if there's like hypertonia, hypotonia, atone, like, any kind of change, let's say, in a person's spine or knee or like wherever it was that I was examining. So I developed that ability through my profession and my professional career to get out of my head and get into my body. So like every day for 16 years, my mind was in my hands. So I'm able to get my mind in today's session. My mind was in my back. It was like, where are my rhomboids? Where are my lats? Where are you posterior delts? Are you there? Like traps, lower and mid. It's like a symphony, right? It's like, here are all the, the different layers of the muscle, the rector spinae, like what's going on. So I'm kind of like almost there when I'm doing it. And then evaluating after each repetition, like how many more do I have? So that's actually how I get very close to failure. It's like, okay, I'm at 8 now. I said I was going to do 8, but I still have more. So can I do one more? Yes. And then I'll do one more. Okay. And it's like the same question. Can I do one more? Yes, I can do one more. Can I do one more? No, so then I'll like finish the set off at 10 or whatever it is. And then the other thing I've started doing recently is just kind of doing partial reps as well. So maybe I'm at 9 and I wanted to, I don't know, do 12, or I wanted to do 10. And I know I can't do 10, but I'll just kind of do whatever I can. Like I don't have the full range of motion, but I'll have like a partial rep. Like I'll have partial movement before it like kind of fails. So I'll go to failure that way too.
I feel that today, knowing you for the past 7-8 years, today you look the best that you've ever looked.
Aww,
and I think
thanks, Mo.
A lot of it is because of these routines and rituals. And you mentioned you lift heavy. And I have a feeling a lot of people listening, especially women listening, will think, I can't do that. I'm afraid to build too much muscle or build bulk or look like a man or whatever the thing is happening in their head.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that? Because I feel like it's such a big fallacy.
It is a big fallacy
of lifting heavy for women, especially in their 40s and 50s.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is a big fallacy. And I hear it all the time. Like, I think if you go, like, we'll put the link for the Instagram post, like in the show notes, so people can kind of see what some of the comments were. But I actually think that there was a comment there saying like, hey, how do you not get bulky? Like, I want to put on weight, but I want to lift weights, but I don't want to get bulky. And I think for the majority of women, it's very difficult to do that. Like, I think it is possible for kind of a genetically blessed, let's say, or, freaks, maybe, depending on how you want to look at them. Like, there is a kind of a subset of women who are very much androgen dominant. Like, they have much more conversion into testosterone, and then dihydrotestosterone, which is kind of like super testosterone, which is obviously going to drive a lot of muscle mass. Like, there are some women who are like that naturally. And certainly I think that if you, so there's kind of there's that type of woman, but I would say that you would probably know if you're that woman already, because your whole life, and we had a conversation with Kashif Khan on the show. We'll put a link for that. We were talking about like androgen dominant. Like, this is the woman who, through her, let's say, teens and 20s and 30s, always was very lean, always had a 6-pack, could have like the chips and the crackers and the, whatever like foods in excess and never really lose that. So if you're that person, sure. Like, you can totally, like, women totally can get bulky. But for the majority of women, you will not have that kind of, we'll say, genetic, like preference, right? Because your genes are also not your destiny. So even those women, there's like ways that we can kind of manipulate the fitness program for them so that they don't actually get bulky. But for the majority of us, and that's like myself included, we convert a lot of that testosterone into estrogen, right? Like, we have that aromatase activity, and then like estrogen is made. So, and estrogen in and of itself is also an anabolic hormone. It's like a growth hormone. It drives cell proliferation. But I think it's very, very difficult for 95% of women to do it. And even for the women who are genetically blessed, like, you have to work for many, many years, possibly decades, in order to bulk, right? Like, there's certain, you can certainly like make a lot of, and I'm not suggesting that you can't make any gains in a year. Of course, you make like huge gains over the course of a year, right? But when you've been doing it for 5 years, 10 years, like, it's compared to when you first started lifting. Like, if I look back into like the first like year or two of lifting, like, I was making crazy gains. Like, I was making like 100% gains in like, now it's like I move up by like 5 pounds, maybe 10 pounds, maybe, like depending on the, the muscle group or whatever. So like my gains in terms of like progressive overload, like being able to increase the weight is kind of is like slowing down now. So I have to, and that's kind of another thing I'll say too, is like, you can't just only progressively overload to infinite. Like you can't just add weight infinitely, right? Like there's going to be kind of like a max that we all reach. So you have to kind of play with other variables like volume and rest time and partial reps, which is what I'm playing with a little bit now. Like I can't do the full rep, but can I just kind of do a half one because I can still get something out? Like there are other ways to continually like mechanically stimulate the system. But I would say for the most part, most women, very, very difficult to get bulky. And if you do notice that you are bulking, right? Like, let's say you're like, God, like, I don't know, like my legs are getting too thick or my shoulders are getting to whatever, then all you have to do is just like kind of trim that back, right? Like you just have to dial down that training. I've never had somebody, I've started getting some comments on Instagram, like, wow, I don't think I could ever actually like look like that. Like that's starting to look a little bit, whatever. But like for the most part, like 99.999% of women are like, I love your arms. I love your legs. I love your shape. Like, tell me what you do. And I've had like the odd, like, yeah, you look like a man. And it's like, okay. Like, it's fine. You can also think that too.
I find you attractive.
Oh, well, that's all. That's what matters.
Speaking of attractive, we were at the gym a couple of weekends ago with our friend Tasha. Mm-hmm. And in that conversation, when we first got there, you super quickly mentioned your age, and it almost like she was almost in shock.
Process it. She was like, yeah, okay. And she came back to it. Like, she's like, wait a minute. What? How old are you? What did you just say?
So, I know
for the record, 45. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's start with, have you had any work done?
No.
Like, I know you haven't.
My face. Yeah. This is my face. This is my body. Yeah.
So let's talk about the secrets. How do you maintain your face and skin and maybe hair? I have a feeling a lot of women are going to ask.
I get asked skin and hair a lot. Yeah. So, and I actually really love talking about this because this is something that I didn't pay attention to forever. Like I actually never put makeup on. I never kind of got dolled up. And then there was kind of this point where I was like, oh no, it's like, you don't have to like hide that part of you, because I always thought like, oh, like, fashion and makeup and it's like so silly. It's like, if those are important to me, then I'm not a serious person. Like I'm not a doctor worth her salt. Like I need to be only focused on like papers and meta-analyses and technique. When I was in practice, it was like, I need to master chiropractic technique. Like I'm a bone moving bitch. Like I need to be the best chiropractor in the city. Like that's kind of where my focus was. And then it kind of changed, where I was like, no, it's okay. It's okay to actually like this stuff, because I would always watch, like, let's say on YouTube, I don't watch her anymore, but I used to this girl taught me how to contour. Her name was Carly. I think it's Bible. Like, I forget how it's like I want to say it's Bybel. I'll find her and I'll put her in the links, but I would watch like these makeup videos of her getting ready. And I'm like, oh my God, that's how you contour. So like I learned how to do makeup from watching like YouTube videos. And I would still argue that certainly I have a lot to learn with that. But my, like, let's say beauty secrets, I try to, if you can call them secrets, I don't know, but I try to use, as we'll say, low tox products as I can. Like I have MAC makeup. I have like all of the kind of super toxic stuff too. I've been trying to slowly change to have, kind of cleaner stuff. In terms of skincare, I mean, this, I wash my face off with olive oil or oil every night. It's like my favorite makeup remover ever. And I actually learned that from my grandmother. My grandmother moisturized her body with olive oil. She would wash her face with olive oil. And then, so I learned that from her. So I have like kind of olive oil that I will put on my face. It actually is the best. Ladies, if you have mascara on, like forget I used to put like eye makeup remover in like a cotton ball and like just like drag my eye, like, like just pull on my eye. All you need to do is just rub the olive oil and that just kind of dissolves the mascara, which I really like. And then I'm going to tell you my evening routine. So I know, Gio, you are so interested in this, but
I see it every day.
Because I'm like, oh, I got to go upstairs. It's like, it's going to take me 20 minutes to do my evening routine. So it's like oil first, and then I'll have like a kind of a gel cleanser. I will use, I kind of cycle through a couple of different like nights. So one night I'll kind of use more acids. So like BHA and AHA, which are just kind of like designed to sort of like take off like that like dead layer of skin, let's say. So I use the products that I'm currently using, no affiliation. It's called Paula's Choice. So I actually remember her name is Paula Beguin, or I'm saying her name wrong, but I remember her. She wrote a book like maybe 20 years ago, and it was like, don't go to the drugstore without this book. And it was like this whole like expose on like what's crap and what's amazing. So she has a skincare line now that I use this BHA thing. One night, another night, I'll just literally use like a thick moisturizer. And then I'll put Vaseline on top of that. And I know that I'm going to get some emails like, how dare you use Vaseline? It's like, well, it really helps keep the moisture in. So I'll put like a moisturizer on, like an oil, let's say like olive oil, or I have a couple of other like serums that are just oil based. Couple of my favorite products are like from Living Libations. They have this Rose Glow face serum. I'll put the link in the show notes for that one. I use it all the time. I'm trying to think of a couple, like they also have like a sea buckthorn oil that I really like as well. And then I'll put like Vaseline on top of it because it's kind of like locking it in. So that's kind of like how I alternate so that my face doesn't get like too dry. And in the morning, I'll put vitamin C, or I'll put retinol. Actually, the other night is retinol. So I'll put like a retinol. And I learned that from Anthony Yoon. So Anthony was like one of the first guests that we had on the show. And he said, there's only two things that actually have been shown to work, like retinol and vitamin C. And I was like, oh, interesting. So then I kind of went and did my own little research. So I use retinol like every other night or every third night. And then every morning I'll use vitamin C. So I'll use vitamin C, like put on my face first thing in the morning. And then if it's going to be like a super sunny day or I'm going to be out all day long, I'll put like an SPF on. If I'm going to be indoors, as I am a lot, no SPF, and there's no need for that. But, yeah, that's kind of my skin routine. And then I've learned how to do my makeup from YouTube. So thank you, Carly, for your instruction, because no one taught me. I didn't know how to do makeup forever. And then hair, what I like to do with my hair. Gio, are you like, how are you doing right now? Are you all right?
I'm good.
Okay. So my hair, I actually like to oil my hair. So same kind of deal. Like I'll put either olive oil, or if I have on hand, I have like jojoba oil that I'll put on my ends. And then I'll kind of like wrap them up at night because my hair is like quite long. So if I'm tossing and turning in bed, if I don't like put my hair in like braids, or I don't put it up in a bun or something, like in the morning, I just look like, I have like hair coming off of everywhere. So I try to wrap my hair, like I'll oil it, and then I'll do maybe like a scalp massage, and then I'll like wrap it in a bun, and then I'll go to sleep. So that's kind of the extent of my hair routine right now, but yeah.
How do you have time for all of these things? I feel like, and I'm asking, most of the questions I'm asking, I kind of know the answer already because I live here. But I feel like everyone listening and watching will be very curious, thinking, how do you have time to fit in a full-time career, and together we have 3 kids that are 17, 12, and 10, all in school, all needing support and
little boom booms,
presence. So what does this look like? How do you, and I think someone might use the phrase work-life balance. I don't know if I agree with the word balance, but I'm curious.
Work and life, and it's like kind of it's just a continuum, right? So with the boys, or, like, how do I fit in like a skin and hair routine? It's like, well, I go up like 30 minutes earlier than I would have otherwise, because if I go up 30 minutes later, then it's like 30 minutes later before I have time to go to bed. And then I find the boys, when they know that bedtime is coming, they just get so hyper, like they're running around and fighting with each other. Like, I don't know why, but it's like, oh, it's bedtime. Let's run around now. So we need to kind of like lull them into, like, it takes about 45 minutes, maybe even up to an hour sometimes, to kind of like settle them into bed. So I think for me, it's thinking about like, what's next, right? Like, remember when we were taking salsa lessons, and Alex, shout out to Toronto Dance Salsa, best. So we have to start going back there because he's amazing. But remember, he was saying when I can't remember what level we were, maybe it was like salsa 2, or I think it was salsa 2, because all the like choreography was like super quick. He was like, you have to be thinking what's next. And I was like, that's a really good thing for life. Like, that's like always thinking like, okay, what's next? Like, what's coming up next? Okay, so dinner is coming up next, and then it's going to be packing their bags for lunches or whatever for tomorrow, and then it's going to be going upstairs and doing my hair routine, and then it's going to be settling them in for their bedtime or whatever. So I think kind of thinking about what's next and staying on top of that has really helped me, because then I sort of always have a plan for what's coming. Like, it doesn't just show up and I'm like, oh crap, I'm not ready for this now. The boys, I really prioritize time with them. So like when, they spend some time with their father as well, right? So like when they're with their dad, those are the nights where I work late, right? So I work really late on the nights that they spend with their father. And then when they're here, then I try to stop working at about 3:00, which is when I go and pick them up, and then, we have snacks, and then we do homework together. And then one of the things that I've loved that we've actually started doing is doing like board game nights with them. And we do like movie nights with them. And we have these like games that we like, questions that we ask at dinner time, like that little deck of cards that we have that we kind of shuffle through and ask, which is great because it gets them off of their devices, which I don't know. I know it's just not our kids, but like, if we let them kind of do their thing, that they're just going to be on Discord, they're going to be on Roblox, they're going to be on all these little like things that they do. So I would rather spend like time with them. I bought our little one, the Jocko Willink series of books for Christmas. Like, we're going to start reading those now together. Like, The Warrior's Way is the series of books. So I'm always thinking ahead. Yeah, I think that's like the short answer.
There's a lot that we do that people may be surprised at. For example, I think it comes down to our values and our the code of the house. But one of them is no devices at the table for all of us, including me and you, because we used to have our phones and check emails or be distracted and not be present. So we've prioritized mealtime, and especially dinner. And we have the ritual of doing gratitude, asking the kids, and we'll go around the table sharing something that we're grateful for. And then we bought those cards where, do you want to share one of the questions as an example for context of what's those cards are?
I think of I picked 4 last night. I'm trying to think of the ones that I chose. It was, what would you like to do more as a family? That was one of them. What would you like to do less as a family? 3 words that describe our family, which was a fun one.
They're conversation starters that create beautiful discussion at the table where we're all present with each other. And I think that in and of itself has been a game changer. And having ritual that we follow and they follow at the same time. And speaking of that,
There was a question, actually, I'll share this one because I really love this one, because this one was the one that kind of sparked that big conversation that we had. It was like, would you rather be the smartest or dumbest person in the room? Remember that one when we asked that, and they're like, whoa. And then we had this like really awesome conversation about it. Yeah.
I want to talk about another important factor of food, which is that we all eat the same thing. And
yes, yeah.
When you and I met, and my son Michael was, I think, 10 or 11 at the time, his diet, in quotes, was anything gold or brown. So bread, hamburgers, cheese, toast, cereals, fries, nothing colorful.
Nutella.
Yeah, Nutella. Now he's eating broccoli and cauliflower and green beans and all sorts of vegetables and a variety of food. And we all eat the same. And I'm sure there's a lot of parents where there's a lot of stress and overwhelm. And one of those stressors could be that the children want to eat different, or they might think, well, I can't do Dr. Stephanie's protocols because now I have to cook different for me than the rest of the family. Right. So how is it that all of us eat the same? And what did you do for Michael that allowed him to want vegetables?
Well, I think there's a couple things. One, I was a hard ass about it. So that was maybe a bit more difficult. It was like, this is the food that we have. You don't get to go into the pantry. The kitchen is closed after dinner. Like, there's no more going into the fridge or whatever. We stopped ordering in because he would only eat kind of like a certain burger from a certain place, like loved Costco burgers or whatever. And so part of it was just like taking away his access and saying like, this is what's available. And then his age, being at the time, like, 10 or 11, like we started talking to him about why it's important to eat this way. Like, what's going to happen to his brain when he has, vegetables, let's say, what's going to happen. Cause he also, not to kind of get into all of his health issues, like he's had some health challenges, but like, gut and like digestion has kind of been like as you might imagine, as you might, kind of logically conclude, if you're only eating foods that are white and brown, some issues with gut, like lots of, let's say, issues going to the bathroom and that kind of stuff. So explaining to him what fiber is, why fiber is important, how that can help with like certain, problems that he might be having, how his gut is really connected to his brain. And then like, as he got older, like making those conversations a little bit more sophisticated. So giving him a little bit more detail about the importance of greens and what greens help the liver do, and like the gut microbiome. And like when there's roughage, like when you have kale or when you have, greens, it kind of cleans the, sort of sweeps through the intestines as it's being processed, et cetera. So I think for, our children, at least, giving them the why behind it has been incredibly useful, because they're very, I think all kids are kind of curious. Like, I think it's more interesting to them, like, for you to tell them why they should be eating it. And the reason is like beyond, well, it's because I said so, that's why you should eat it. Like, that's not like, I don't think that's a compelling enough reason, at least for our children. So for Michael, I know that was very helpful. And then as now we have a 12 and a 10-year-old, and they're asking kind of the same questions, right? Like, I have our 10-year-old is like, well, is this good for me or is this bad for me? Is this going to help my blood sugar? Is it going to, and we kind of talk about this idea of like having protein first, right? And why is having protein first important? Well, because it helps to keep you fuller. It helps to slow it helps to slow kind of, that blood sugar rise and all the things, right? So it's always like, you can have your carbohydrates, like you can totally have the carbs, but you can have them after you have your protein. And at least my 10-year-old, and it might just be his age, but he seems to be a carb monster, like just wants all the carbs all the time. And it's like, you can totally have them, buddy, but you got to rack up those protein points first.
I want to get a bit more personal. First of all,
by the way, I should also say that I have no idea what you're going to ask me. Like, we've seen some of the comments on Instagram. So I kind of have an idea of like some of the questions, but like, you've told me you're like, no, we'll just get on and record. I'm like, oh, okay.
For someone who loves prep, I know this is outside of your comfort zone, which will be a future question about comfort zones. But people, I know people see you as a professional, a doctor, a scientist, an expert, often quite serious, and I'm not sure if serious is the right word. And I know the other side of you, which is extremely playful and fun. And I want people to know that side. So I'll start with asking, who are Kate and Veronique?
Oh my God. Kate. So these are like alter egos. I can't believe you asked this question. So these are like just accents. Kate is from, she's from Buckingham, and she's very posh, and she loves to shop. And
well, I apologize for cutting you off. I just want to explain this. So we love going on dates, and we prioritize date nights and our relationship. And sometimes for fun, we'll go out to a restaurant and you stay in character as one of these women. So the waitress or waiter thinks that you're British or French. So can you be Kate for a second?
Yeah. Like now I'm like, oh no, I'm under pressure. I can't do it. No. So I'll like be Kate, or, Veronique, who's, she has to think about, the word, cannot remember the word in English, but, something like this. And, so Veronique is my French, alter ego. And, and I have like a profound love for languages. So I love to, like learn. I want to like improve my French. Like I used to live in Quebec for many years. So I have like, already a pretty good understanding of it, but I really want, like to be like fluent. Like if I had to take Le Bac, or like if I had to take a bac or something, I could get my proficiency in it. So, so Kate and Veronique are my, English and French, alter egos.
I want to give a shout out, and they're not a sponsor of the show. Maybe they should be, but give a shout out to Duolingo, because
Duolingo should be a damn sponsor of this show. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For anyone who doesn't know what the app is, can you share? Because you're such a huge fan, and now the whole family is on this app, and you've probably, anyone you know in person, you've told about.
Oh, I love Duolingo. It's basically, you can learn any language. So and this is like, obviously like no affiliation, just absolutely love what they're doing. So you can actually just join for free. Like you don't even have to, like, I have a paid membership because I add my family on there, and then my kids and you and I are learning different languages, but you can totally just join for free. And like they've figured out a way, like they're brilliant, to gamify language, right? So like it's like a fill in the blank, or you have to speak, or they'll ask you a question in English, and then they'll put a statement in English and you have to translate it into French. And then it kind of gets harder as you go through like the lesson, the individual lesson. And then overall, it kind of gets obviously harder as you kind of progress through the entire course. So, I love it. I currently have, French. I'm probably like 60% of the way through the course. So going through French, I also want to get to kind of like the intermediate Italian and Portuguese this year. I also have Arabic. I'm currently learning the Arabic alphabet. And then I have Greek on there just for fun. Like when I want, like just, if I don't want to, I just play out with the Greek as well. Just because I had my ex-husband and his family are Greek, and I spent a lot of time learning Greek. So I just kind of want to maintain like what I've learned for my boys, and, also just to speak, like I still speak to his family. So it's just nice to be able to talk to them.
Now back to date nights and our relationship. Why is it important to prioritize connection? And what are the things that you and I do that have become ritual with respect to not just being in the relationship, but working on the relationship?
Well, I think so for us, I can say that what I've noticed is that because we're not always perfect, like let's just call a spade a spade. Like there are times where we forget, like we're so busy. Like we've had like, for example, like the past, last quarter of last year, we were very, very busy. There was like a really big, like we had a huge turnover in the company. We were kind of changing things and like up leveling many things on both your and my side of things. And so we were very busy. And so there were like a lot of weeks where we weren't actually going out and we're doing things. And what I notice is, and of course it always happens when we're like super stressed, so it like compounds it. But when we don't make that time for going out for dinner, I don't know why this happens, but I actually want it less, right? So I'm like, oh, we don't need to go out. Like, it's not important. Or, oh, we don't need to like connect. We don't need to have sex. Like those things are not important until we do go out or until we do connect. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so important. Like, it's almost like, and I think that so I haven't confirmed this yet, but I've spoken to enough women where I think this is like a female thing where if we don't get something like, let's say sex or connection or date night or whatever, it's like we almost like turn off our need for it. Whereas I don't actually think that happens in men. Like men have like, a different hormonal composition, let's say, different needs, like want to be connecting all the time. So what I notice is when we don't do those things, when we don't prioritize, it's very easy for me to be like, oh, that's not really important. Like, oh, I don't want to spend the money on dinner. And like, I got to spend 45 minutes choosing an outfit and getting my makeup on. Like, why don't we just stay in and order in and I'll just stay in my pajamas and I'll wear my house slippers and, and I'll do my nails or something. Right. And it's like, well, no, let's not do that. Let's actually like go out and have a proper dinner or go dancing or go watch a movie or whatever it is, or meet and connect with other people. And every time that we do that, I'm like, oh my God, why did I even get into that mindset of like, oh, I don't need this. Oh, this isn't important. I would even say the same is true for like sex. Like if there's been like kind of like a, like a little dry spell, it's like you sort of think like, oh, like at least I think I'm like, oh, like it's not so important. I don't really like, and then you have it, you experience it and you're like, damn, like this is real important. That's really important. So I think that's why it's so important. It's kind of like use it or lose it, right? Like if you're not connecting, then you almost like lose the connection. And I think that being in a loving, connected, nurturing relationship requires work in the same way that if you want to build a body, right? You want to build muscle. It's like, you can't just like wish for it to happen. You have to get to work. You have to go to the gym and you have to lift heavy weights. And the same is true in a relationship. Like if you want a loving relationship, you have to work on it, and not only on it, but on yourself, because there's nothing like a relationship to bring out your childhood trauma. There's nothing like an intimate relationship, whether it's like a parent-child relationship, or, an intimate relationship. At least that's been my experience. So I can only talk about my experience, but I feel like there's been times where I've been so activated, let's say, and it's like, oh, okay, I have some work that I need to do here. Like I need to like really heal this story that I have that, you're going to get bored of me and you're going to leave me. And like that, like, that's my story. It's like, he's going to like wake up one day and be like, meh, she's all right. Like she's 45. I could probably trade her in for a 20 and a 25-year-old, It's like,
the following opinions expressed are not those of the interviewer. I totally understand.
Yeah.
I think
and it's like, you hear, you even like your parents, for example, they'll be like, like, oh, you're 70 now. Like, I'll just trade you in for two 35-year-olds. Right. And like, that's like, even though it's a joke, I'm like, oh my God, that's like my worst fear. Like, it's like actually my worst fear. So I think that you need, like, for me anyway, like there needs to be, and we've talked about this, like, kind of in our own, like intimately or whatever, but like love is a verb, right? It's like, it's an action item. It's not something that you're not just going to like fall into an amazing relationship that you never have to work on. it's like you have to work and you have to work on, like, at least for me, I have to work on myself too.
The work, though, the input of the work has an amazing output. And it's like working out, where the more you do it, the more you don't have to, even though it's like you build momentum so that it becomes easier, and it's an investment. So I think there's a lot of misbeliefs that people have. For example, I'll give the first one we talked about. If women lift heavy, they'll be bulky. Another misconception, I think, is that, or maybe just a weird belief that's been taught through generations, is that the longer you're in a relationship, the more you become roommates.
Oh my God, I hate that one.
And I think that
I hate that one.
Bullshit, that it actually gets better. Sex gets better, but you have to prioritize it and even schedule it. And a mentor of mine said, whatever your priority is based on your calendar. So if you say something is important to you, but it's not on your calendar, then chances are it might not be. And I think people might assume or believe that scheduling date nights or scheduling even sex isn't sexy, but creating the container and the space for it to happen actually makes the sex better, because you can anticipate it and it's exciting. And same with any kind of experiences. Like you and I love experiential dates, the kinds of things that you might buy a ticket to watch or participate in, because we love experiences and we love collecting memories. Yeah. One of a few weeks ago says something so profound about us in terms of what we value. And the phrase was, we love turning dreams into memories. Mm-hmm. And part of that is in collecting experiences. And I think it's the same with the relationship. And for anyone watching or listening, schedule it. Like block off the time for the things that have to be important, whether it's your relationship, whether it's your self-care, or recharging time, or free time, or non-work time, or play time. And that leads me to my next theme, which is play and pleasure and desire, which may feel like dirty or naughty words to people, but I don't think they are. And what is your definition of desire?
Can I just say, you're so well prepared for this interview. You're like, this leads me to my next topic. I'm like, wow, he's really.
Hey, I have to up level my interview skills if I'm interviewing the interview master.
I just want to say one thing about what you said before about love, and then we'll talk about pleasure. Like, one of the things that I hate, if there's something that if there's like a trigger that I have, it's this idea of like sliding into mediocrity with like anything in life, like anything in life. I remember one of my mentors, I was actually just saying this the other day. One of my mentors said, the only way to cruise is downhill. And man, that just really stuck with me. And I think that that's so true, even like with relationships. Like, pardon my French, like Véronique might come out here right now to say that, like, fuck that. Like, fuck that. Like, we become roommates. Like, I want our love, like our finances, to like compound, right, over time. Like, think about it like the stock market. It's like, I want like an 8 to 10% return every year, so that over the course of like 40 years, the amount that you started with and the amount that you end up with is like an exponential, like orders of magnitude more. Like, I love this idea of creating and it takes work, not saying this like whatever, but again, this idea of like turning a dream of mine is to have like, to create a legendary love, like a love for the ages, right? Where, our children will talk about how their parents, right, interacted with each other. And that's going to inform the way that they interact with their future wives. And then like, I want that to kind of, I want that legendary love. Like I want, and I'm, willing to put in like the hard work to kind of work on myself and be able to, because part of like, I think a really big part of love and having love is to and having that legendary love is like minimizing residue. right? And minimizing this, like just stuff happens over time, right? Like you get into arguments, you get into a little tick here and a little tiff there, and like you don't talk about it. And then there's this like residue, this film on your love, let's say, on your union that kind of like grows, and then it becomes just like this biofilm, like on your, like it just becomes this like film on your love, and then you no longer, you like forget, like, and I've seen this so many, like there's so many like aunts and uncles and family members where we're like, God, like why are you together? Like you hate each other, where you can't even remember why you're with that individual. And it's like, there was a reason why you were attracted to them. Maybe it's like to heal some childhood wound, or like you would, whatever, but like there was a reason why you were attracted to this person. And I don't ever want to forget that. So, I just felt like kind of compelled to share that, because I feel very strongly that in all aspects of my life, like excellence is a core value. And I want to be really proud of our relationship. And that means oftentimes it's the conflict piece. Like, I'll also say this, and like, we're going to get an E on this for sure. Like on this podcast episode, it's going to be a little E for explicit, but like, ladies, listen to your body. Like when you see your man, let's say, like you should get wet. Like you should be like really excited, like to see him. Or, like I was looking at you, like when I went to the change room, and like, remember today when I like finished my bath, like we like split up, obviously went to the change room, like change, whatever. And then I saw you and I was like, oh my God, he's so fucking hot. Like it was like, I was like, oh, is it hot in here? Or is it just me? It's like, dear Lord, I just someone passed me a fan. Like I feel like, it's important to like really remember that, like physically, like what you are physically attracted to. And the other piece is like conflict, like the conflict piece, which I will admittedly say, maybe I'm not the best at yet, but you're very patient with me. So I really appreciate that.
Well, you're very welcome. We started this conversation, sharing the catalyst for the conversation was this morning at the gym, or the other morning at the gym, where you taught me something and it blew my mind. And you do this to me all the time, where something happens in conversation and then you say, oh, you know what? How about blah, 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 blah. And then you blow my mind. So I want to make sure we cover it
just in that way. Like, what about blah, 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 blah?
Well, this morning you said that, the lungs are the body's biggest fat loss organ. Mm-hmm. And just walking out of the gym, going through the lobby, and I had to just stop walking and say, what did you just say? Mm-hmm. So can you explain what that means? And maybe we'll do some super quick lessons of the things you've taught me.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, it was just, like when we are utilizing fat for energy, right? So, whether that's stored fat, like the stored version, like the way we store fat, like when we eat too much, like when we eat in excess, let's say, your body will store that for a rainy day. And so it'll store it primarily in the adipocyte, and it will, like in the fat cell, and it'll store it as a triglyceride. And triglycerides are basically made up of like carbon, oxygen, hydrogen. So when you are utilizing fat, let's say you're exercising, maybe you are lifting weights, or, you're doing whatever exercise you're doing, you will, and you're using fat. So the conditions are set for you to utilize your fat storage. So it will pull the triglyceride from the fat cell, and then it'll kind of break the triglyceride down. And it appears that about a fifth of the triglycerides actually turned into water. So you'll, excrete that through what's called like the emunctories. So things like, you'll sweat, like it's like turn into water. So however we get rid of water, we sweat it out, we pee it out, we poop it out, we breathe it out as well. And then it looks like the other kind of 80%, let's say, or 4/5 of that is actually exhaled as carbon dioxide. So that's why when we look at like some of the breath analyzers, let's say like Lumen, for example, one of the sponsors of the show, what they're looking at like when you breathe into that little thing, is they're like, how much carbon dioxide is she exhaling? Because that'll give them an indication of whether you're in fat burning, like how much fat burning you're doing. So that's what I was saying. Like your lungs are your prime, because when you like, people think like, oh, when I lose weight, like my fat, like I use up my fat. It's like, well, where does the fat go? Right. So the triglyceride is broken down. Part of it is excreted through water. And then like the majority of it is actually like it's exhaled. So, and that actually explains like when you're exercising, why your breath, like why your respiratory rate increases, right? Is because you're increasing your fat your fat burning capacity. So that's what I was saying. I have like some of the, I was actually talking to Jocelyn, who's on our team. And I was saying to her, like, I say the craziest things to you in the morning. Like the other day, you and I haven't talked about this, but you remember the other day, and I was like, you die 2 times. And you're like, what? And I'm like, the first time that you die, and this is like 5, like, so everyone listen, this is like at 5:30 in the morning, where we're just like, we're just like going to the gym, getting ready to like lift some weights or whatever. And I was like, you died twice in your life, Gio. The first time that you die is like when your physical body dies. And then the second time that you die is the last time that someone uses your name. And you're like, whoa, what? You're like, I haven't even had coffee yet. Like what, what are we talking about? And then, so at the point I was talking about my grandmother, and I was like, so my grandmother, she's still alive because I still talk about her a lot. I talk to my kids about her. I talk about the influence that she had, like how I really admire her. And then I was also talking about Christ, right? I was talking about like, well, can you imagine people talking about an individual, like whether or not you're Christian, whether or not like, or, like any religion, like you could talk about Muhammad, right? Like, it's like, we're still taught like, with this individual, like with, this person who we now refer to as Christ or whatever, like it's 2023 years later that we are still saying that name. And so, and then I guess that morning I was like contemplating my own mortality, and I was contemplating like legacy and like building a legacy, and like, what does that look like? And, because one day we're just going to be like fertilizing the daffodils, fertilizer for the tulips. But, well, this really got dark. What were we talking about? What were we talking about?
How your lungs are your fat loss organ?
I think your question was, what do you do for fun, Steph? And I was like, well, you only died twice. That's why I have no friends. That's why.
Speaking of what you do for fun, what would be a dream come true date for you?
A dream come true what? Date? Depends on the season. But I would say, because all I'm doing right now, because it's wintertime, all I'm doing is like spamming Geo with like chalets, pictures of chalets and skiing. So I would say that in the wintertime, I love the idea. I love the idea of like, and I'll use a French word here, like profiter. On peut profiter, like we can profit from the winter. Like I think living in a place that has 4 seasons, right? We have like fall, winter. What are the other 2? Spring, summer. Like it's, we have like, everyone's like, oh, I can't wait for summer. And like, okay, of course, summer, my favorite too. I love summertime, but I love summer because it's special and it's not here for a long time. And in the same way, my grandmother used to say 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. In 2 shakes of a lamb's tail, like summer's done, like very quickly it's done. So I feel like winter is done as well, like very, very quickly, right? So in order to like not stay in for like 4 months, to go outside and to like ski and to, I want to do cross country skiing. The boys love snow tubing. The boys love skiing. Like to go and ski, I think is a lot of fun. So that's like a perfect date in the winter for me would be like, we go skiing and then there's like an après ski afterwards where maybe we have some hot, hot chocolate. And then, if it's just you and me, then, a little bounce chicka bow bow afterwards and like a nice chalet, something like that. But if it's like a day date, like I think, gosh, Something where I get dressed up. Like I really do enjoy the process now. Like I really embrace the process of like, putting on makeup and getting dressed. And so that's kind of in the winter. In the summer, it's like, how can I get near the water? And is the water salty? Because the saltier the water, the happier I am, right? So when we've traveled to Europe, when we've gone to Italy, like especially if you're on like the southwest side or area, you're on the Mediterranean Sea there, very, very salty water, just does wonders for my body, my mood, I just love it there. So I want to find the water. Actually, I want to find the water, I think, all year round, because I want to find frozen water in winter and I want to find liquid water in the summer. So day at the beach would be super fun. Being on the water, like water sports would be like super fun. I actually really like the idea also, and this is more of a European thing, but like fun, and there are more in North America, but I think this is more common in Europe. But like farmers markets and like going to find like local producers and like kind of picking like vegetables from like a really big, like a big, area, like where everyone every Saturday, like all the farmers come from all the rural areas into this like one locale, and then you can kind of shop and do your weekly shopping there.
Taking notes, so thank you. You said something an hour ago, and this is what you do. You just say something so damn profound that I had to process it and now circle back and ask you to give detail. The phrase you said was, your genes are not your destiny.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean?
I just mean that irrespective of what your blueprint is, like we all have tendencies, right? Like there's going to be a tendency for our genes to behave a certain way. We can modify how those genes are expressed through the epigenome and through our lifestyle. So, for example, if you are someone such as myself who tends to run estrogen dominant and actually not clear estrogen well, if I'm not sort of strategically eating the right things or fasting, like when I was kind of going on my own sort of journey, it was like the ketogenic diet, like a female-centric ketogenic diet was really important. And then I was fasting at certain points in my menstrual cycle, especially when I was like super inflamed. So for like an estrogen dominant woman, I talk about this in my book, The Betty Body, but like fasting in the luteal phase of the cycle, and then like fasting with like bone broths and like doing like having like things like minestrone and stuff like that, where you're getting a lot of the glycine and the like amino acids that are going to help with gut health and gut integrity, which for a lot of women who are estrogen dominant, this is a really big problem. So your genes are not your destiny in that if you have like a certain pattern, predisposition, even like for example, like really famously what's that guy's name? Thor. What's his name?
Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, Chris Hemsworth. I think it was recently revealed that he had the 4/4, so like the ApoE 4/4, which does significantly increase his the likelihood that he will express like that he has very poor processing of saturated fats, let's say, and then over the course of time, that Alzheimer's risk for him is significantly elevated. But like the answer is not just to lay down and die and be like, well, that's it. That's what it is. I'm a 4/4, like life's over. Like there's a lot of things that you can do. I would even say like Dr. Dale Bredesen, who has been on the show like he's been on like 3 times, talking about how we can actually structure a certain type of ketogenic diet to help with, the reduction of these tau tangles and these beta amyloid plaques that we see in these patients, with like, a 4/4, a 3/4, a 2/4, like any 4 in that ApoE kind of combination. So yes, you have there is a predisposition there and an increased risk, but it doesn't mean that it's going to happen. So I think that there's a lot to say about manipulating the expression of the gene at the level of the epigenome. So just like epi means above, and then like above the genome.
You mentioned Chris Hemsworth, and it sparked a memory because we actually met him. Mm-hmm. I want to give a shout out to our friend Gareb Shamus, who's the founder of Comic-Con. And we were at one of his Comic-Con events in 2019, got to hang out backstage, met Chris, which was unbelievable. He feels like he's not genetically human. He's more superhuman. But what I want to talk about is that you're a giant fan of Captain Marvel. Mm-hmm. What was it like meeting Brie Larson? Because I was there and I saw what happened.
Yeah, I was really overwhelmed. I think when you, I was crying. So like I met her and I was like, when I met her, I was like, so lovely to meet you, like blah, blah, blah. And she was so lovely. We chatted. And then, and then afterwards I was just like overcome with emotion. Like I started crying. I think you have video of me crying.
I do have videos.
Yeah. And I think, sometimes when we look up to people, right? Like that movie, Captain Marvel was I really loved the movie. There was a couple of like lines in there that really were very meaningful to me. And I think when we look up to people, let's say or a character like Captain Marvel, like I look like, I've said before, like I love Wonder Woman. I love Captain Marvel, these like very strong female figures, because like didn't really have that kind of growing up, even though those characters existed. Like there wasn't these like big motion pictures about them, right? Like Wonder Woman was like a series with Linda Carter. But you see something in them, right? That you either have in you. So there's like a point of relatability, or you admire them for doing something that maybe you haven't done yet, but you would like to. And I think for me, meeting her and just like following her, like she's very, like, even though she has this like, big blockbuster, super mainstream, like incredibly intelligent, like she's incredibly intelligent, and her training for prepping for the movie is just very admirable. Like her work ethic was very admirable. So I was just really happy to meet someone who I related to, who I felt like I could see parts of myself in her, Brie, but also obviously Captain Marvel. Like I saw strong parts. And like there's this line in the movie where she's like, I've been fighting this whole time with one hand tied behind my back. Like imagine when I'm fully unleashed. And I was like, oh my God, like that, it really like hit me. Because there's been many times in my life where I do feel like I've been stunted, or I've held myself back. And I feel like, what could happen, when she said that and she kind of came to that realization in the movie, it's like, yeah, what could happen if I finally stopped staying small, if I finally stopped hiding, if I finally, stopped self-sabotaging, like what could I possibly do? What could I possibly do? So it was, it was meaningful to me in that I see a lot of myself in that character. So like to meet her was like such a like wonderful, tender moment for me.
I think it also translates into the work you do. And will be the last question. You've helped tens of thousands of people through your clinical work. You've helped thousands of women with the Estima diet. And now a very important part of your work is helping other women who are health practitioners, coaches, doctors to make a bigger impact in their work. Why is that so meaningful and important to you? With, we have the Estima certification, you have the Chalice coaching and mastermind group. Why is that work so meaningful and important to you?
I think it's actually very similar to why I feel so connected to the Captain Marvel movie and why I feel so connected to Wonder Woman, or those characters at least, because I feel like at least in female medicine and in healthcare, like we're often, I hear this all the time from women that are in their 30s and 40s. It's like they're told, well, this is just how it is. Like you just get old and your menstrual cycle turns into a gong show and you lose your hair and, you gain weight, and that's just like how it is. Right. And there's like no guidance. It's just like, well, sorry, you're kind of washed up. That's what it is. And I think that there hasn't really been any interest a lot of in female healthcare, because a lot of it is dominate. I mean, it's getting better now, but I still feel like there's so many women that are gaslit by their practitioners, male or female practitioners. This isn't just like men are bad. Of course, obviously I have like sons and I'm in a relationship. Like I love men. But I think that there is kind of this old guard that's like, listen to me, I'm the doctor, change into your gown before we have a discussion. So there's already an even bigger power dynamic there. Like pro tip, ladies, like if you have something that you want to discuss with your doctor and the nurse comes in and says, here's the gown change, you can say, okay, I'm going to change into this after I have my conversation with them. Because if you were in a gown with your ass hanging out of the back, because those gowns are not like, they're not fitted. They don't have zippers. It's like, there's like a tie and like your whole butt, and your back is out. So like you can have the conversation and ask your questions to the doctor while you're fully clothed so that you don't actually feel as vulnerable as you might in a gown. And I really love, I'm enamored, and I continue to be enamored with this idea or this dream, which I hope to turn into a memory. But I currently have this dream where women are actually able to make better decisions for themselves, despite what they've been told, either by the mainstream media, by their kind of traditional medical doctor who doesn't know any better and is just telling them that it's their fault because they don't know what to do about it. And I want to educate more women on their own unique sort of physiology and how we are different than men. I'm very interested in helping men age well, but right now I've been turning some of my attention to doing that because I feel like a lot of men also need a lot of help, but I think women have been so underserved for so long that, and I know that I can't do it myself, right? Like I can't just like educate, like, I hate when I hear people being like, I want 1 billion people to, and it's like, okay, there's only going to be a few people who can reach that many people. But the way that I want to do something like that, the way that I want to have this mass message get out is yes, through what I'm doing. But I am only one person. So maybe I can train other female practitioners who can then train who can then influence their communities. Right. And then that's how I kind of feel like I can have a bigger impact is through training other doctors and other health coaches around female-centric principles around eating and training and, stress management. So that's kind of what I want. It's still a dream, but I'm working really hard to make it a memory because I want there to be a different reality for our beautiful girls that are coming up now, that they're not just put on the pill, or if they are put on the pill and they make the decision, let's say, to go on the pill, that they've actually been, that the side effects and the possible complications have been discussed with them. Right? Like they talk about like how many women, like you'll hear this all the time, like women that come off of the birth control pill, they break up with their boyfriends because they smell different to them. Right? Like there's an area like it's called the major histocompatibility complex. Like when we are on artificial hormones like progestin, it actually changes the way that we smell. So we can be attracted to a mate actually who's more genetically similar to us, which is kind of gross. But like we're attracted to men that are more genetically similar to us. So you'll hear like I can't tell you how many times, like women that are like, when I got off the pill, my partner smelled disgusting to me. Like my sense of smell absolutely changed, but no one is talking about that. No one is talking about that. So I just wish that if you decide to go on the pill, like love you, awesome, great, good for you. And that you can also say, and I'm aware of the risks that I'm taking. Because what often happens so much in healthcare, but particularly with females, is that we marry ourselves to the promise and we divorce ourselves from the risks. It's like, yay, unprotected sex. And then you want to have a baby 20 years later and you can't get your period, or you're not attracted to your partner anymore because they're absolutely repulsive to you. Or, you've damaged your lipid profile now is so subpar that your doctor's now saying, well, you should probably be put on a statin. That also happens as well. There's so many things that are not discussed. And I know I'm just using one example, like the pill, but it's one that a lot of women come into contact with, when we're teenagers, our moms march us down to the medical doctor and say, she's sexually active, so let's put her on the pill. Or, perimenopausal women, how many times do I hear a 50-year-old woman who's now getting acne, let's say, and they're like, you know what, you should go on the pill. And it's the bitch is not menstruating anymore. Why are you putting her on the pill? Pardon my French, but why? Or she's 55 or whatever, and they put her on the pill. Why would you do that? What is the decision tree? And I don't fault the medical doctor entirely, because that's what they know. They're just doing what they know. I guess what I'm offering is the red pill. It's totally, you can totally have the blue pill if you like, but you come over here to Steflandia and it's the red pill. It's the red pill. Yeah.
So if any women who are practitioners or coaches or doctors want to be mentored by you with the Estima certification or Chalice, can we put the links in the show notes?
Yeah. We'll put those in the show notes for sure. Yes.
Well, thank you for being on my show.
Did we get to all the questions?
I think 25% of them. I think we have to do another.
Oh God. Okay. We got to do another one.
Yeah.
So you know what I would love? This is the Easter egg for those of you that are still listening. I would love for you to put in the comments in YouTube, because I personally go through the number one rule, obviously, I break all the time, is the number one rule of the online world is don't read the comments. I read all the comments still. So I would love for you to put in the comments if you enjoyed this show, what you liked, what you'd like. Should we do another one, a part 2, or as Véronique might say, une part 2? Peut-être une part 2. Okay. So do you want part 2? What you liked, what you didn't like, what you'd like to see more of. And then we have a list of all the questions. So if we do more, we can continue to answer.
And put in the comments on YouTube, what do you want me to ask? What topics do you want to make sure I cover?